Hey guys, Miss Timpson here, and I just wanted to record a quick video for you guys reviewing simplifying fractions. So this is something that you learned in previous years, but we're going to review this skill because this is something that we are going to use for this chapter as well as chapter 7 and chapter 8. So this is something that is really, really important, and this is something that you might run into with every problem with fractions. When we get to the end of the problem, our answers always have to be in simplest form. And so we're going to talk about what that means and how to do that, okay? So let's pretend that I have the fraction 3/12. Okay, so basically when they ask us to put a fraction in simplest form, what they mean is they do not want for there to be a number that both the numerator and the denominator have in common, that each of them can be divisible by. So basically what that means is the numerator is the top number, okay? Numerator is the top number. The denominator is the bottom number of the fraction. Think about it this way. Denominator down. So the denominator is on the bottom. I want you to think, is there a number that goes into 3 that also goes into 12? Think about that in your head. What number goes into 3 that also goes into 12? So one thing that you can do to decide this is you can list what numbers go into 3? 1 times 3 gives you 3. Is there any other numbers? No. What numbers go into 12? 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Then if I kept going down on this side, I would say 4 and 3. But since both of those numbers are already listed, I can kind of stop there. You don't have to repeat the numbers that are already listed. Okay, so what numbers do both charts have in common? The biggest number they have in common is 3. That is called the greatest common factor, the GCF. Greatest common factor. That means the biggest factor that both 3 and 12 have in common. So we're going to use that number, because since 3 goes into 3 and since 3 goes into 12, that tells us that that fraction is not in simplest form. So we are simply going to divide the top by 3, divide the bottom by 3, and that 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. That is in simplest form, okay? And I do want to take a second to point out that 1/4 is what we call a unit fraction. So when the top number is a 1, that fraction is always in simplest form. Okay, so that fraction is called a unit fraction when the numerator is 1. So let's look at another example. Okay. Working with a little bit bigger numbers here. But that's no issue. We know our multiplication facts, so we are all set. Now, let's think about what numbers go into 12 and what numbers go into 48. Okay, so 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 6 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. This is the same as our last chart, right? So now let's move to 48. Notice how, like, this side, it's going 1, 2, 3. I'm just going down that list. 1 times what? 2 times what? 3 times what? 4 times what? And some numbers do not work. Like if I said, how many times does 5 go into 12? That doesn't work. It does not go into 12 evenly, right? So sometimes you have to skip over numbers. Now, sorry, that's a little side note, but 1 times 48, 2 times 24. Does 3 go into 48? If I'm not sure, I can solve that. That's a terrible 3. I can solve that out on the side. just to double check because we know how to do long division. So 3 does go into 48 16 times, and 4 times 12. Okay, 5 does not go in evenly. 6 goes into 48 8 times. 7 does not go in evenly. 8 goes in 6 times, but I already have my 8 listed, so I'm good. I just listed the 6 and the 8 to the side because I ran out of room. So now we're going to circle the greatest common factor. Circle the number, the biggest number, the greatest number that they both have in common. So in this case, obviously 1 is not the biggest. 2 is not the biggest. 3 is not the biggest. Neither is 4. So let's look here. It looks like 12 is the biggest that they have in common. Right? So I'm going to divide the top by 12, divide the bottom by 12, and I'm going to get 1 over 4. Okay? So this process that we're doing with writing out all the factors, that is something that when we start simplifying is a helpful tool, especially if you struggle with simplifying. We highly recommend to show all these steps that we've shown so far when simplifying. However, when you have mastered your multiplication facts, you might be able to see which numbers are the biggest quicker and not need that to write out the factor tree. Okay, that is just up to you and your specific needs. Now, I do want to show you one thing. We're going to use this problem as an example, and we're going to make believe we chose a number that was not the biggest. Okay, so let's say that I accidentally chose, instead of choosing 12, let's pretend I accidentally chose 3 for some reason, okay? Both numbers have 3 in common, so that's okay. It's just not the biggest. It creates more steps for myself, but we can still get the correct answer. So I would do the top and the bottom, divide them both by 3, and I get 4 over 16. And that should be like a little light bulb set off in your head that, oh, those numbers also have something in common still. And let's say, although, we know that the biggest number that 4 and 16 have in common is 4, but let's pretend I accidentally chose 2. 2 over 8. That should be another light bulb moment. Oh, there's still a number they both have in common, which is 2. I get 1/4. Notice how we still got the same answers, but we had several extra steps. Is it okay to do that? Yes, it is. Is it the easiest way? Is it the easiest route to go? No, it is not. However, if you struggle with your multiplication facts, you are able to pick a smaller number and just divide multiple times if it makes it a little bit easier for you. Okay, but we eventually want everyone to get to the point where they can choose the biggest number and have less work to do. Okay, so that's just a short little video on simplifying fractions. You do have an assignment on Monday as well as Tuesday on simplifying fractions. Okay, let us know if you have any questions with this, about this. Okay, thanks guys.